aren't you sitting here? Like, or
I can see.
how many people are on this panel? Like, I feel like there's 2 chairs and you want us together, but then I don't know, unless this chair's an extra. But I think we should go by how many, like, I think you should shove that chair. Oh, I can't tell. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, you're good. So this chair's just sort of some sort of, that would be for Huck. I don't know. I'll put it.
Thanks. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm blocking you. Sorry. Suzanne.
Marz.
Nice to meet you.
Max.
Marz.
Nice to meet you.
guys. Marz, yep.
Okay. Now let's wait for your moderator.
All right.
They have 5, so there's 2 others.
And that's yours. Hi, Suzanne.
Nice to meet you, Emmanuel.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Max.
Marz.
Hi. Suzanne.
Amy.
Nice to meet you.
Max.
Marz.
Nice to meet you, Amy. Hi, Amy. Yeah, you know how this goes. Ooh, interesting chairs.
Hello. Oh, great to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Marz.
Moderator.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you, Emmanuel.
Emmanuel?
Yeah.
Great energy
Hi,
for it.
Amy. Yeah. Good. How are you?
That's the man for the job. Wow. That's good. Well done.
That light is bright.
Lights
Yeah.
are so bright.
I know it's.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get some.
That sounds good. Oh, thank you very much. She'll be over there. She'll be over there, or I'll be over there.
Oh no, I'm nervous.
No, I'm definitely nervous. Have you done many
I've done a few, but
Oh my God! I'm gonna throw all of them. Try not to.
I know somebody's
Sometimes
question. Can you say a joke right now? And
Someone's
you're
also
I've
trying
never
to-
written a joke in my life.
I don't do that on purpose.
You can do a
I only
credit.
do it when I get paid for it.
Like it's, but yeah.
I know. I was like, I need the questions in advance so I can practice smart answers. No. I was like,
about to say, hey.
No.
Thank you.
Testing. Testing. Oh, okay.
So your outside voices, please. Get right up in the microphone.
Got it.
It's much easier to turn me down than it is to turn you up. To avoid the feedback. If you can hear them in the speakers, if you can hear your voice in the speakers, that makes that get needed too, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. That's hard to. Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah.
I should Miraculous Ladybug summer special. Oh no, that's okay.
We can start in just 1 minute, gang. Ooh. Uh-oh. So much power going to my head. Do y'all want to scoot in? Do you like being
We don't bite.
isolated? Everyone likes their seats. That's fine. Oh, yay! That is the energy I'm looking for. Love it.
When you hadn't arrived, Josh,
Yes.
he was lined up to be your replacement
Hey,
moderator.
great! Hey,
So
thanks so much.
He's in position.
I might need you anyway.
Just let me know what the script is.
Great. Let me get back to you on that. Yeah. We got a couple of people coming in. Come in, have a seat.
She'll probably ask.
Okay, so they're telling us we got about 50 minutes, 50 minutes. So I want to make sure that we get all our time. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So first, welcome everybody. Thank you for trekking out to the library today. This is really wild up here. Like, I didn't know we were going to have a view. This is awesome. Okay, so my name is Joshua Pruett. Hi. I'm today's moderator. I am a Emmy Award-winning writer for Phineas and Ferb. I'm a New York Times bestselling author for The Last Comics on Earth. Yeah! Those bags are so hard to get. See me after. But we're here today to talk about comedy and kids' books and how to use that to grab readers' attention. And I have an absolute murderer's row of panelists joining me today. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their book that we want to highlight. And then we're going to get into it. We're going to have fun. We're going to have a little bit of audience participation today. We're going to keep it kind of loose. But thank you all for coming. So I want to start with Amy.
Hi, my name is Amy Chase.
Yes, appropriate to clap.
Thank you. This is my first time paneling at Comic-Con, so I'm very
Woohoo!
excited. I am here today to talk a little bit about my work with Maverick and Papercutz. Specifically with Papercutz, we have the Miraculous Chibi Summer Special. This is Miraculous Ladybug, really fun and based on the Zag animated shorts, if you've ever seen those on YouTube. Super fun, super kinetic. And then my next book with Maverick, which is the same, they're under the same imprint with Mad Cave, Maverick, Papercutz. I did a retelling of Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing, Abuzz, for young adult readers, which is aiming to make Shakespeare a little more accessible and friendly and kind of bring those jokes that I adore so much from the original text into the modern setting and hopefully in classrooms and educational settings to make Shakespeare a little less scary for kids.
Awesome. And that's called Abuzz, Amy?
Abuzz, yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, Emmanuel?
My name is Emmanuel. I'm here to talk about Cactus Kid.
Woo!
It's a series I did with No Brow, Flying Eye Books. It's about a little grumpy cactus who rides a motorcycle and he just wants to be the best wizard in the world. Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah, makes sense.
Perfect.
Marz Jr. and Transformer is the worst bot ever.
Woo!
And it's about Ballpoint, who is a Decepticon who transforms into a pen and has a bit of an inflated ego about himself. He thinks he's the best Decepticon, but he ends up screwing up a lot and ends up getting kicked out of the Decepticons and declares that he's going to go take over the Autobots by himself.
Awesome. Thank you, Marz.
Hi, I'm Max Lang. I'm the illustrator of the Grumpy Bunky book series.
Woo!
I'm here with my wife Suzanne, and she's going to tell you more about it.
Sometimes the writer talks more. The Grumpy Monkey series is about a grumpy chimpanzee, actually, named Chimpanzee, and he struggles a lot in life. Things don't come easy for Jim. He's got a lot of big feelings, but they play out, I hope, in funny ways. The most recent book that we've got that came out is this one, Grumpy Monkey School Stinks, which is a graphic novel for young readers.
Yay! So first, a little word from our sponsor, the Children's Book Council, a nonprofit trade association representing 140 publishers of children's, middle grade, and young adult books in North America. The CBC coordinates a variety of book awards, curates free reading lists, and educational resources for teachers, librarians, booksellers, and families. They fight against book bans, partners with national organizations to foster a lifelong love of reading. The CBC's Graphic Novel Committee advocates for graphic novels, manga, manhwa, and related formats, powerful tools for literacy. Whether used in classrooms or enjoyed at home, the committee works to ensure these visual storytelling formats are recognized and respected as meaningful literary works. Comics count. Right, gang? Woo! Right. It also remains dedicated to uplifting and celebrating the voices of BIPOC and LGBTQIA+ authors and illustrators, damn right. So now let's get into the good stuff. So, in my experience, folks who do this for a living have funky origin stories. Everyone has their own path. In some cases, right, we charge our own path. We make that path ourselves, okay? So, Amy, I want to start with you. Have you always been funny? Did you get bit by a radioactive rubber chicken or similar? What is your origin story?
Oh, man. Well, I've always been told that I'm just a little funny in, I'm sure, a myriad of ways that were mostly polite and kind, but, I've always been a talkative kid, and eventually if you talk enough, something funny might come out, and people are going to laugh, and then you're going to go, oh, I should do that again. I don't know, wordplay is my specialty.
Oh, nice.
I'm a word nerd, I'm an English major, and so I love doing those kinds of puns, and I'm known at my work as the person who will find the pun in everything. And so,
Do we have pun fans in the house today?
Yeah?
Yeah. Big pun
Excellent.
fan, yeah.
Excellent. Because they get plenty of eye rolls, plenty of groans, but I think it's one of the highest forms of wit, and that's also why I identified so much with doing Shakespeare retellings, kind of translating that fun stuff. But yeah, if people happen to laugh at the things I say, then I guess that makes me funny, but I just like telling stories, and sometimes I will find the humor in even the weirdest of situations. So I try to look on the positive side of things.
I think that's great to hear because I feel like there's lots of different tool sets to being funny. It's not just one thing. So Emmanuel, moving to you. So I feel like there is something to funny drawings, right? And being able to convey emotion or a joke or a characterization through poses. Can you talk a little bit about how you came to that process? Were you a doodler in school?
Oh yeah. I was
Yeah,
definitely
okay.
a doodler. I got in trouble for doodling a lot in school, actually. And I've never been funny. People laugh at what I put. Like I'm pointing my heart out, and people are laughing at it.
So it's there on the page.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're laughing at your personal self.
Yeah, all my pain and
Yes,
all
yes,
that
yes.
stuff, that's what people are laughing
That
at.
tracks.
So yeah, that actually. I think I've always gravitated to reading comics, like the newspaper funnies and
Yeah.
stuff. So I think I always just wanted to do that, and so I think a big influence on me was definitely you talked about poses. I know we're here to talk about books, but SpongeBob had those those
The gross ups.
the gross
Amazing,
yeah.
amazing, yeah.
And so I think that's what you realize how quickly that can really just make the joke, So
For
I try
sure.
to incorporate that into.
That's perfect. Marz, what about you? How did you get into this? Where did that start for you?
My family's we always tease each other with jokes and stuff, so I think that's kind of where my comedy started, and then just, feeling awkward, and then if you say something that's funny, you're like, okay, I can continue to do that.
I like that feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Do you come from a big family, small family?
A small family.
Small family? Okay.
Yeah, but all the aunts and uncles always tease you when you have family gatherings and
Absolutely.
such. Yeah, it's kind of our love language is teasing each other.
That's like the obstacle course that we run, right?
Yeah.
When we're getting older.
Yeah.
Max, what about you? Getting into, I think, something that, your approach visually, I think, is really unique. There's a lovely blend between illustration and almost an animated approach. So, how, where did that come from for you?
Well, I actually started in animation.
Oh, okay.
I always wanted to be an animator, and I grew up in Germany. We're known for our sense of humor.
Right?
So that was always my way of understanding the world and dealing with it. And but for me, what's especially important is character-driven humor.
Yeah.
And I think that's also coming from the animation side of things. So
Definitely.
I'm always looking for very expressive characters and designs that allow for that kind of humor.
That's great. I want to highlight that too again in that toolkit. How many folks are in the audience who are interested in writing or creators themselves? Yeah, fantastic. Okay, cool. Yeah, I feel like, Amy brought up puns, Max talking about character. There's lots of ways in. And your superpower might be something specific, right? And I think part of the fun of doing all of this is it's the cross-training. It's oh, what does this person do? What does this person do? So speaking of Suzanne, what was that catalyst for you being a writer How did you get started?
Well, I started by going on the executive track of things, and that choice was made. I always wanted to be a writer. Let's start there. And I went to film school and did all the things, but in film school there were a lot of bitter teachers who were unsuccessful writers telling us, you will not make a living doing this, and it's hard, you won't have a steady paycheck. And I had parents who were like, you're gonna have, you're paying for college, how are you gonna get a job? You've got to get a steady job. And so it was kind of like, okay, not an option. Went on the executive track, like I was the assistant, and then I was the receptionist, then I was the assistant, then I was the all this. And I had a really great time helping other people realize their vision.
Oh, great.
I got to work with tremendous talent. There was always a frustration of like, but when will it be my turn? What about my stories? At the risk of getting all sentimental, it took meeting Max, and he really believed in me and was like, you're funny, like you're the first person I bounce ideas with, and you should be doing this. And so I have to credit this guy for that.
Awesome. You guys should get together or something. Maybe do a book.
I sense something there.
Yeah. Maybe get married. I don't know. That's all really great to hear, everybody, because again, the specificity of those journeys, right? But I also feel like there's a funny thing about creative people is like we all kind of get to a certain place by being by ourselves a lot, sitting down, not always being quiet. I'm kind of a loud guy, but there's a piece of this which is I don't talk to people. I've got to go make things. Right?
I gotta go make tiny people in my head.
Exactly.
And talk to them.
I'm gonna invent people and I'm gonna talk to them. Perfect. So my kind of follow-up question is how do you go about grabbing readers then? Because this is a conversation. It's one-sided for a long time. But, are you mindful of that? So like, Emmanuel, when you're putting Cactus Kid together, like, do you have a specific audience in mind? Is there an ideal reader? Like, is any of that a part of your process?
I think, you know what, I'm not sure, because when it started off like for people my age. I started Cactus Kid as like, it was a short zine called Desert Baby.
Oh, cool.
And so it ended up becoming, I guess I didn't know I was writing for kids. I thought I was writing for 20-year-olds.
Awesome.
Awesome. So yeah, I think now I just kind of keep that same mindset, and it just still for 7-year-olds. So.
That's perfect. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to share today is that I think that it's a gift to be able to write for younger audiences. But I think the way I look at it, I think the way all of you look at it, is that really it's for everybody. Yeah. It's all readers.
Yeah.
Amy, for you, like, what are some other, you mentioned puns. Mm-hmm. Like, is there anything about your writing style, anything about your format or structure that you feel like, like you're trying to translate Shakespeare for younger readers? Mm-hmm. So are you doing anything different with how you're rolling that out? Like, how are you approaching that?
Yeah, well, as you kind of talked about, like with the writing to an imaginary reader at that point, I can't do that because I imagine the one imaginary reader is the most critical person in the whole world, and if I think about them too much, I get too scared. Mm-hmm. And so I do try to write for the version of myself that I know would have enjoyed this similar story, or remembering all the stories that I've enjoyed, comics and television and otherwise, that didn't talk down to me, because especially when you're writing for a younger audience, you don't want to talk down to the kids because they are so emotionally intelligent, and they are funny as well in their own way. And so trying to meet them where they're at with that humor. But I also try to remember that if a parent is reading the story with the kids, you want to also kind of reach them as well and make it something that, like, if this is like a family activity, this will be really nice. And then, so it's very different with like the licensed writing for Miraculous, Chibi. When I do something like a licensed project, because I've also worked with My Little Pony, I've done Dungeons and Dragons and a few other very well-known properties, my favorite part about that is to, especially if it's new to me, which Ladybug was, finding the elements of the story that I can see, like, oh, this is why it resonates with this audience, and trying to capture those elements. And with the Chibi shorts, they are so hyperkinetic and they are so dialogue averse, which was terrifying when I was like, oh, I can't make too many wordplay puns. But then I had the privilege of working with some phenomenal artists. I did 2 stories in this book. The first with art by Ryan Jampol, which was Picnic Panic, and then Kite or Flight, which was with Sophie Scruggs, who they have also, you know, Sophie has done a lot of My Little Pony. Ryan has done some of the Archie comics. And so trusting them and their cartooning sensibilities as well, and identifying good visual beats, fun, you know, payoffs to a visual joke, because you know, a young mind is so elastic and they will fill in the action between the pages. They can almost animate it in their own heads. And so setting up those visual punchlines without the words, it was actually scary for me to kind of trust that the artist will also feel those comedy beats. And then with Shakespeare, again, trying to take the core of, you know, untwisting all the crazy words and figuring out, like, where's the punchline that I love so much, especially in his comedies. Because I know, like, when I was in high school, one of the most odious things in an English classroom was the No Fear Shakespeare books. The teachers were like, we don't want you reading that, it dumbs it down. But I think being able to then translate the soul of the humor and going, I know what a writer in the 1400s, whose work is now public domain, was trying to say here and make a joke here, and then finding a way to connect that to the younger readers, again, in a way that's like, this is how I would have wanted to be talked to if I was in high school, and not treated like, oh, you'll never understand the punchline here. So that's the way I kind of balance it between, I feel like the Shakespeare is not a licensed work, but, you know, still very identifiable.
In a way, it kind of is. It's
literature.
Interesting. Yeah. Like,
And then,
it's still challenging.
And then working with a very distinct property that has a very special visual language that people will know and love, and trying to connect to that.
Yeah, and I think in both cases, like you mentioned, it's like you're trying to reach your reader where they are. And try to speak to them in languages that they understand. Marz, when you were working with, it's Brian Smitty Smith? For the Transformers book, which, like, I literally laughed out loud many times reading the book, but it was also my favorite free comic book day of this last year, because I just thought, as a conceit, it's kind of brilliant. How do you like to work with writers? Do you get involved in that creative process when you're putting a book like this together?
So the first book, a little bit, had like, he had an outline, and I would make some suggestions.
Oh, fantastic.
For like visual jokes. And then, I just kind of get the script, and then I try to make it something that I think is funny. So, and then, have his jokes on top.
Do you, like, in your own creative process, when you are working with somebody else, does that change significantly versus when you're doing your own work?
Yeah, of course.
Does it?
Yeah, because you're kind of beholden to the script, so I want to make sure I hit the beats that he has, and kind of tell the story that he wants, and trying to fit it into the allotted pages that we have.
Yeah, and when it's your own, like, are you your own taskmaster when it comes to that stuff? Like, do you separate those creative processes, or are they merged for you?
I guess I separate them at first and try to improve upon each step that you do. Like, maybe I could plus it here. I took some improv classes at UCB years ago, so it was, always one-upping, or, see something, especially when you start working on the page, you're like, oh, this doesn't fit in here, maybe I could adjust here, or maybe I can make this joke here.
Yes, anding yourself.
Yes, yes, exactly,
Do you, have you had experiences where, like, you're frustrated with that writer person? Like, not.
Oh, of course, like, oh, there's too many robots on this page.
There you go. That's what I wanted to hear.
Crowd shots, and they're all on bicycles.
Could we have 2 robots instead? Oh, okay.
Thank you so much. I apologize. Sorry.
There you go.
Thank you. Sorry.
All right. That was a plant from earlier. Okay. Marz, but I think the other thing.
The old bag trick, I love it.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Classic. Another kind of humor, gang.
Visual.
Another visual. Yeah, we got a lot going on today. Max and Suzanne, I think it's interesting that you each have your own creative processes, you each have your own role to play, but also you're in the same house. I'm assuming. I don't want to,
Correct, yeah.
intrude too much. What does that process look like for the two of you? How much back and forth is there? Like, do you keep it very separated? What does that look like?
I would say there's a lot of back and forth.
'Kay.
Usually it starts with us sitting together and just brainstorming ideas, and then you take over.
Yeah. It's always like, oh, what's the next book we're working on? It's going to be a graphic novel. What's it going to be about? And then we do the big brainstorming between the two of us. He, at some point, says, just riffing out, there's so many robots. I get, that's too many chimpanzees! So there's one book where I wanted to make we have Jim's family in it, and I wanted it to be literally my family. I'm one of 5 kids, and he was like, no, it's too many.
They look too similar.
How many different chimpanzees can I draw? But anyway, that aside, so he nixes those kinds of ideas. But once we have brainstormed, like, okay, we're going to do a graphic novel, and then what's it going to be about? And that's the hugest piece, I think, of the two of us sitting together for a while, back and forth. Then I go off, write that draft, usually much too slowly. And then he very quickly turns around thumbnails, and I much too slowly respond to the thumbnails. And then
Is this like a thing like at dinner with him going, yeah, so honey, when are
all
you
day
gonna
long,
give me
it's
those
all,
notes?
all day, every day.
Okay.
What are you doing? Hurry up. But to be fair, he's like really prolific, and I'm really slow and distractible. So
You're not slow, you're just distractible.
everything distracts me.
But-
Anyway, but we'll go back and forth on a draft. So I'll have a draft. He's my first round of notes on that draft. Usually I do a rewrite. Somewhere around then, depending on how much more rewriting we feel is necessary, either I'm rewriting or he's just into thumbnails and into a layout. Because then we're rewriting there too. And Max is like,
Great.
we need a line here. We don't need this line. And there's a lot of that back and forth at that point. I feel like it's almost a constant, like when we're adjusting lines or adding, depending on what format it is too.
It's very important to work in the medium you're actually working in. If it's just on a script page, you're always
You need your mic.
missing the visual element of it.
Yeah.
So we try to get into sketches and on the page as fast as we can, and then we iterate from there, and then keep that open too. Yeah.
And it sounds like that period of refinement really is, you're yes-anding. It's I think that's where that polish comes through. I think it really comes across in the books too, because I think it's like in animation, there's key poses, right, that you're trying to hit. And so I think there's a lovely balance that you guys do in Grumpy that has, where it's like there's a story going on, there's funny dialogue, but then there's also that punctuation point of that key pose. And I also feel like that's where kids get involved first, right, is that visual cue.
I would say the visuals are definitely what would draw me in if I was a reluctant reader. I mean, that's what I respond to. You shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but...
Yeah. But that's the way it works. That's the way it
what
works.
you look at first, and that's what draws you in, and then you just have to deliver on what that promise is, I think.
Yeah.
But, for me, visuals are always very important, and I see the same with our kids. We're not necessarily reluctant readers, but they love anything with pictures.
Yeah, and they seem to respond faster, too. Like, I feel like that's a thing. But they can also be kind of a tough audience, I feel like, and that's that push and pull. It's a complicated relationship with our audience, I think.
They're a very honest audience.
I was just going to say that.
But that's why they're fantastic.
Yes, because then I think when we've actually grabbed someone's attention, it means something, right? So a kid picking up your book, I can't get my kids to read all of my books. Not throwing you under the bus, kid. Good, thank you. but, you know, their sense of interest, right? Their first blush of, oh, this looks cool, oh, this looks funny. I think one of the other things that is vital in this process, I think, is what is that first read, right? So we're talking about covers, we're talking about, sometimes we're talking about characters. So Emmanuel, when you're building Cactus Kid and you're thinking about what that adventure might be, I think one of the things that's interesting in at least those two books is there's a sense of like, it's not just goofy, right? There's a little more going on. And so that was one of the first things that struck me. So I think when you're putting that sort of story together where he's got a goal, there's something he wants to accomplish or something he's after, you know, kids have those sorts of goals too, whether it's big, you know, it's like, I don't want to do chores anymore, right? There's those different levels of goals. When you're thinking about putting Cactus Kid on an adventure, how do you identify what that next story is? How do you go, oh yeah, this feels like a Cactus Kid thing, or maybe this feels like something else? How do you decide?
Well, I've really only worked on Cactus Kid or stories about little kids on an adventure, so I feel like everything kind of, I feel like the opposite. I feel like sometimes it feels a little, oh, this story's a little older, a little, maybe this is one for the zines, this is one for the self-publishing, you know, this is...
How do you make that line of demarcation for yourself? Is it a tone thing? Is it...
Yeah, I think if I don't know, you know, that's a tough one. I don't know. I just like a
But you just
sense.
know.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like, oh,
okay.
this is a joke that I think I'm laughing at too much. Maybe it should go in the scene. You know?
So there's like a sweet spot where if
Yeah.
you're laughing a little,
Yeah.
okay.
And then then it goes to the zine.
Because I thought one of the things you mentioned earlier that I thought was really telling is that for you it was about character and then also maybe being a little too revealing about yourself. You're putting yourself in your story.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny because my dad, Cactus Kid has dad issues, right?
Yeah.
And my dad will say like, "Oh, I really, really liked your book," and that's how I know he's never read it. You know, because if he's read it, then he probably wouldn't love it so much.
That's amazing.
No, but it's about finding the balance of like, you know, you love your dad, you love your parents, but sometimes they're not always the most supportive.
Right.
And
Well, in that life experience, right?
Yeah.
It's like we do, I think as artists, we tend to put our own, like, ourselves, our journeys,
Sure,
our
yeah.
adventures in what we're doing. In my book, Gyro and the Argonauts, it's about the first Greek geek in history. And I didn't know that it was about me starting out in animation, meeting my heroes and realizing that they're not all they're cracked up to be.
yeah.
Until I had already written it, you know, and revised it and went, oh, this was like when I was at DreamWorks, or this is
Isn't that
like when,
nuts? Yeah.
and I just didn't know.
Yeah.
Like, Amy, for you, like, is there a place where you say, oh, this is too, oh, thank you. Thank you, kid. Here's your $5. Thank you, Katie. Like, how, is there a place where you go, oh, too much me? Or is it more natural than that? More organic than that?
It's interesting, especially in working with licensed properties. I know that there's, especially, because I do come from fanfic. I do come from the world of, I know it's a scary word, but I started really writing in college by doing fanfic with my friends. And so there's always a little bit of the self-insert in the way that you want things. But when you're working on a licensed property, I know one of the biggest fears from people is, oh, well, the writer's just going to put themselves into it. And, and there's not so much of a space to do that when you're especially honoring the characters and making sure that you stay true to that universe. But even in doing the Shakespeare story that I did, I wouldn't say necessarily there's a lot of myself in it in the personal aspects of the characters, but I do still pull from the world around me, and so And then there were things that I put jokes that I would have made in high school, and the editor, I had a joke about a payphone, and the editor was like, sweetheart, kids don't know what payphones are these days. And I was like, oh, I've reached old.
This is not an archaeology book. We can't.
She's like, they also vape, so the bad kids can't be smoking cigarettes. Like, it was a little bit of a learning
Amazing.
shock. But that's one of those things where I'm like, okay, that's the perspective I'm coming from, and because I grew up with the 90s Buffy type TV. But there are still elements, and especially I want to say a little bit more in Abuzz, where there's elements of the characters in Abuzz are queer, and so it's a modernized Shakespeare story, and a lot of them are a little more free to be who they are. In writing that, I was thinking of my own high school and going like, how many of my friends came out afterwards and didn't feel comfortable to be who they were? And the crux of that Shakespeare story, of course, is miscommunication. I'm sure that describes every Shakespeare play, but those elements of like, well, when the characters then are free to express themselves in gender and sexuality, where do we find the conflict? And it's always in just how kids, talk to each other and gossip. But I was keeping those kind of experiences I had in mind, but knowing and recognizing that the framework of the story, again, in a either licensed or an adaptation that has a certain amount of prescribed detail to it, I couldn't infuse too much of myself there, but I do have original things that are coming out eventually. They're under NDA, so I can't talk about them here. But, yay, more stuff. But there are other places where I do find the ability to put a little bit of emotion in there. I haven't reached the point of like, whoa, too much introspection yet.
Okay.
I'm sure I will hit that point soon, though.
Or you'll hear a review and maybe,
Oh, yeah. Well,
yeah.
And there may be elements, if someone
Yes.
notices something that maybe I had my little blinders on and didn't quite notice, and somebody might pick up on that. Doesn't mean it's not true, or that I was like, oh, I wasn't thinking of it that way. But I do think all writers kind of, you write from your heart and your experience, and so if bits slip in there, I might be so close to the material I don't notice, but it is definitely a different way to do that in licensed work.
For sure.
Because you do also have to, especially with like Miraculous, you have to stay true to the world guidelines and play
right.
with their action figures in a respectful manner.
Yeah, it's their sandbox, and
Yes.
we're just playing in it. Like, Marz, for you, it's like, was that an opportunity to play in someone else's sandbox? Was that restrictive? Both? How did you come to that experience?
Yeah, it was an honor because I was such a fan of Transformers as a kid, and still am a fan of Transformers. And we did the old school G1 style.
So good.
I just, I loved it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like there's I think working in fan spaces, you feel a certain amount of responsibility, number one, with what you're doing. But it's like, can be so exciting. It can be
it's
so
super
exciting.
And it's not part of any other kind of world except, the old Transformers, so we can kind of play with it a little bit.
Were there things like that you in particular were excited about, like grabbing? I mean, outside of the whole thing.
Drawing Optimus Prime.
Yes!
Drawing all.
No, that deserves applause! 100%. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
And creating a new Transformer was an honor.
Yeah, it's so cool. And a funny Transformer,
Yeah.
too. And there's a story there for that Transformer.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. One of the opportunities I've had is to work in Doctor Who. Who knows Doctor Who? Are there Doctor Who fans in this space? A couple years ago, I got the chance to do a Colin Baker original audiobook called Waterworlds. And it was an absolute dream. And one of the things I did, though, is that I did kitchen sink pass. Like, I put everything in there and had a very lovely and patient story editor to be like, oh, we don't need all those things, Josh, for this story. And I was like, really? Come on, can't we? But sometimes we have a tendency where it's like, oh, is this the only at-bat, right, that I'm going to get? And, hopefully not, right, for any of us. But honoring those fan spaces that we grew up loving, like such a cool thing to get to do. There's a weird thing, Suzanne, and this is for Max too, like to go away to a room and your job be, I have to go and be funny. It's not really a job, and yet, sometimes, knock on wood, we get paid to do that. What do you need to do for yourself to go and sit and be funny and start thinking of these stories?
You, me, you.
No, you go ahead.
Well, for me, it's kind of what Max touched on earlier, is that I'm just super distractible. And so the thing I need is to somehow forget about everything else and put limits on myself. So you got to sit and focus. And if you do, you can then be rewarded with your little game on your
So
phone.
incentives. So you use incentives. That's
Yeah,
great.
I have to give myself incentives, and
Okay.
then the other thing I have to do, journaling. I gotta get stuff out of my head,
Yeah.
and a lot of times the journaling is really mundane on my part. It can just, it's like, oh, don't forget to do this later, and this is you have to pick up the kid at this time, just because there's too much
Yeah,
in my
yeah,
head, and I just
yeah.
need to get that out, and I need to know what my reward is, and then I need quiet time, and then
Okay.
once I'm there. The fun, the telling the story is hard, but the funny parts I think come more easily.
Okay. Like
For-
once you're
like,
going.
when
like,
I'm in it,
when
I'm
you're in
hearing
it.
the voices of the characters, and
Very good.
I can feel the jokes, and that to me is the harder part for me is the actual story and getting, like how are we getting from A to B to C.
Yeah.
But as we're getting, once I'm on that path, the jokes kind of come fairly naturally. And then there's always we have a back and forth, so then more jokes come from Max. And, there's a lot of, then he'll see something like, oh, what about if we had this? There's a lot of that I'm very lucky, because a lot of authors don't work that way with their illustrator.
Yeah, yeah.
But for me, it's the other way around. Like, I need to start with the emotional core and the story structure. And usually when I pitch an idea to Suzanne, it's always really heavy and dark, at least to her mind. To
'Cause
me, it
it's-
seems hilarious.
Well, it's in a
but-
German accent, first of all. Anything he hands me, even on paper, I read in a robotic German accent. And so it all...
So even if I think it's funny, it's usually not there. It starts with, the emotional core, and then I'm so lucky that I can usually jump off of whatever Suzanne has done, and she has she always hears the voice of the characters, and she's really great at that, and then that gives me the jumping off point to be funny with the drawings and try to plus it there.
Yeah, yeah.
So for me, that is really important.
Okay.
Like, just jumping to the jokes is trickier.
Yeah, having that scaffolding, right? Having that story, and then you can build around it. And obviously, comedy comes from pain and being German. So if you're not German, I think most of you can supply the pain part, and then you're probably okay. Emmanuel, I want to talk a little bit. I'm a process geek.
Okay.
Who else likes process?
You do.
Like thumbnailing, all that, so fantastic. So when you're sitting down and starting something new, what's like the first thing that you sit down and do?
Sleep. Sleep is super important.
Great.
Yeah, that's the number one, because I feel like, especially after like working on something for so long, I'm usually not the best about getting my stuff in for the deadlines.
Okay.
So I'm losing sleep. So if I'm gonna start something new, I try to make sure I'm well rested, because I feel like that's the only like that and some coffee is like what I need.
You're like the first writer, artist I've ever talked to who was like, hey gang, get some rest.
Yeah, it's
This is gold, gang. This is gold. And then, like, are you doing full outline? Are you doing beats? Sometimes I like to use Post-its. How are you building this thing out?
Yeah, usually if I haven't doodled something, it's just outline. It's just literally
outline.
the notes app on my phone. I'll be anywhere and just start adding to it.
Okay.
And that's from there, when I feel like I have a good chunk, that's when I start outlining.
Okay. And then, are you doing full thumbnails after that? Are you doing little tiny ones? How do you, does that process change?
No, I feel like as I'm finally getting to the point now where like I'm starting to get like offers from people, and I'm realizing like
Also?
Yeah. But like the thumbnail process, I'm realizing that they're allotting me. I'm like, oh, my thumbnails usually take like 3 times the amount of.
Okay.
So I think I'm giving developed thumbnails. I wish I could be faster about it, but I haven't
Okay.
developed that skill yet.
But they're pretty resolved by the time you're deep into
Yeah,
that.
so by the time I get to
Yeah.
inking, it's like, that's the easiest part.
Okay.
I guess the thumbs,
Okay.
spending a lot of time there.
That's great. Gold. Okay, everyone's favorite question. Where do you get your ideas? But I want to get into it a little more because I think this is the kind of crowd that wants to get their hands dirty, okay? So sometimes it's not about coming up with the idea, right? It's cultivating it, okay? So we can get ideas from anywhere. One of the things I've experienced, Stephen King talks about this in his book On Writing. Who else has read that book? Who likes King? Ooh, everyone needs to go and read that. Even if you don't like King, getting into his creative process is really, really fascinating. But the idea, one of the ideas he talks about in there is about the uncovering of ideas. That it's a little bit more like Jurassic Park, right? So you're going in and you're excavating an idea and you see parts of it at different times. I've had stories that I've been working on for 10 to 15 years and have uncovered them slowly. I didn't see kind of the whole thing. And then sometimes I'll be thinking about something in the back of my head and it's like a subroutine. And when I'm driving in my car or when I'm getting up to go wash my hands, I solve it, right? Not at my desk, I solve it someplace else. So Amy, for you, like, what is that creative process so that when you are trying to cultivate, catch, conform those ideas after you've got them?
Yeah, it's a long process, and like you said, I've got ideas from when I first, I started working in a comic book store in college, and the reason I got into writing was because I read just as many stories that made me want to write stories that were just as good as stories that I read and went, I could do that better. But so I've got some ideas that I'm still kicking down the road and watching as they develop as I kind of expand on my own confidence as a writer and my depth of ideas, you know, moving past just the very shallow, small, or like doing anthology stuff. Most of my ideas actually do start as a pun. A lot of my titles have wordplay in them, and I will sit there and go, that's really funny. Where's the story? And so I have to sit there and let it marinate. But my biggest problem is I'm an overthinker. I'm an overtalker, if this panel is any indication. But, you know, a lot of my writing doesn't look like writing because it's just quietly spinning in my head. And my problem is I will often, like in the shower or when I'm in bed, have that breakthrough moment, especially in bed when the lights are out. My brain is like, good, now that I've got you for a second, here's what I was thinking about. And so I keep a notebook by my bed. It's the Beetlejuice Handbook for the Recently Deceased.
Perfect.
Which will be very funny someday if anyone ever finds my, you know, mad scrawlings. But I do. Sometimes I have to write down an idea or like a question for myself where it's like, what's this character's motivation? Or like, how do we make the pun work on all levels? But it is a process. Like some things come faster than others. In the process for pitching Abuzz, I had actually worked on another idea for about 6 months. It was an original. And I was like, okay, I'm going to send 2 things to the editors just in case so they have, you know, maybe they like one better than the other. And Abuzz was one that I was like, if I were to adapt Much Ado About Nothing, how would I do that? And I wrote that in 3 hours, and they were like, great news, we want to go with this one. And I was like, wow. So the one that I spent 6 months on is still exists, and maybe I'll reevaluate it someday, see if it can come out. But yeah, sometimes you get those ideas real fast and it falls into place, and thankfully I had a great framework for that, courtesy of William Shakespeare. But yeah, it is a process, and sometimes you'll just know when it's right, or it's the right time, or you find maybe a publisher whose own voice matches your goals for the project. And I think these things kind of just continually evolve. But if you've got, you know, if you've got a notebook you can keep by the shower, or I've had to do voice memos in my car sometimes on long drives.
I do those a lot.
Yeah.
That helps me a lot, yeah.
And eventually you're able to start piecing it together, because if it's something that didn't come together quickly, it doesn't mean you have to throw it out or it's not a good idea. There is just a piece of the story that you still haven't uncovered yet. But starting with a funny title never hurts. I mean, if you've got a solid concept, even in the wordplay, you can figure out the rest later.
Well, and then you start amused, which I also feel like is part of the process, is like you want to stay invested. You want to stay invested in the thing that you're trying to build. Because yeah, sometimes it's 6 months and it doesn't go yet. and sometimes it's a few hours, and then it goes.
Yeah.
Marz, what about you? How do you catch the stuff when it comes? Like, are you waiting for the muse? Are you chasing it?
I think both. I think sometimes you sit down and you just try to, you do thumbnail and just see what comes of that. And then I think, yeah, like you guys are saying, a lot of times it comes when you're not thinking about it.
Right,
You're
right,
like,
right.
oh yeah, like in the shower, like, oh yeah, I could draw that and that would allow that to make more sense.
Yeah. And like solving things sometimes, yeah.
I mean, sometimes you have to sit there and try to grind it out,
Right.
which hardly works, and then it usually comes, like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get some almonds, and then you're like, oh, cool, yeah, I could draw Optimus Prime dancing there, and that will work.
It's it's the Suzanne distractible methodology approach. Any questions? I want to make sure we've got, the folks have questions for our panel today. Anybody? Yes, in front.
I've heard on like a YouTube video about making comics that for like a comic it's like this, right? On the other page you want to have like a page turner. So would you recommend putting like a joke in there or just having like something that makes the reader want to flip it? Especially if you're writing for kids who like maybe are like being forced to read it for like an assignment or like,
Absolutely.
their parents want them
That's a good question.
to read something over the summer.
Emmanuel, Marz, Max, anybody?
I think every page you should try to have it, but yeah, it could be a joke or it could just be someone talking off screen that the characters like has to turn around and see to kind of turn the page.
I have a thought just because what I always really got stuck up on is page layout and thinking about these things when doing comics. And what I found was my workaround for that, because I come from filmmaking and storyboarding and animation. I just, whenever I get the script, I draw it out panel by panel, and I don't think too much about the page. And then once we're happy with the story and how it unfolds, then I go back and do the page layout, and that's when I try to find these breaking points at the end of a page. And sometimes I will extend a panel or make it bigger to achieve that, a little question, a little cliffhanger at the end of each
For the page.
page turn. But if I start thinking too much about that at the beginning of telling the story, I found it too distracting.
Okay. Emmanuel, yeah.
I think for me, if you can't think like of a joke, like you can always do like a reveal, like something like that. You know, you can set yourself up for that. I feel like that kind of, sometimes planning the jokes doesn't work, but like a reveal.
Yeah, and on the prose side too, I think it's like, because that's a technique to keep someone reading, right? So it's like, I think on the prose side, it's shorter chapters, right? So a lot of thrillers, like if you go pick up like a James Patterson or something, like it's gonna have 7-page chapters, 8-page chapters. And I experienced even on Gyro, like younger kids, if they're incentivized to read chapters with mom and dad, and it's shorter, then they get to that incentive faster, and then they keep reading. And we don't want kids to burn through the stuff and not enjoy it, right? Of course. But if you're thoughtful of those things as the creator, everyone wins, Any other questions before we wrap up? Anybody? Yes, in the back?
Yeah, for those, if you didn't hear, the question was like struggling between two different puns or having those kind of moments. Yeah, sometimes, especially if you're, when you're trying to make puns, you will sometimes take the lowest hanging fruit, and sometimes you're just like, oh, it's not really fitting here. I've definitely had an abundance of puns and abundance. But sometimes you also want to make sure it's not too distracting. And again, with Abuzz, one of my favorite things is Shakespeare has so many great fools. And in Much Ado About Nothing, it's Constable Dogberry, one of the weirdest names in Shakespeare. And so that is not only puns, but it was spoonerisms and malapropisms, putting the wrong word in the wrong part of the sentence or making up another word that sounds like something else but isn't quite there. One of my favorites that got an actual LOL from the editor was in the book, she is the college guidance counselor trying to counsel young children about going to, higher learning, and she herself is a crazy, making up crazy words. And she's talking to someone whose grades are slipping, and she says the recent vigor mortis of your academic performance. And so that was a fun opportunity to go, okay, hopefully, people will also know she's talking nonsense, but it's rigor mortis, it's death, but it's also the vigor mortis because you are losing enthusiasm for your schoolwork. And so just kind of trying to layer things in like that. If I have to pick between two puns, it is usually the one that makes me smile the most, as long as it's not obtrusive to the text. But in that space, it's fun, and you're just hoping that, especially if it's too complicated and you would have to explain it to someone else.
Make them fight.
Yeah, just sometimes you just got to go with the flow there. But yeah, I'm always looking for ways to put those in my stories and having fun with them as well.
I also like abundance. That's good.
Thank you.
I like abundance. Okay, gang, we're going to wrap it up today. We've got a signing just outside. You can come by, chat with these wonderful creators, get a signed book. Thank you all for being here today. And let's hear it for our amazing panel. Thank you, everybody. Bug, can you take a photo of us?